pages, the ability to add completion actions, right? So when someone completes a form, what do we want to do with them when they come in, whether it's an asset download or whether it's a contact us? Either we want to add them to a nurture and nurture them a little further, or we want to send them directly to sales for follow-up. And in that case, that's where completion actions come into play, because you can identify on your form exactly what you want to do with those sets of folks. Next up around strategy would be nurtures or engagement studio programs. Engagement studio programs can be used in many ways, as I'm sure you guys already know. One way of using them is to kind of nurture net new prospects who come into the system, right? Net new prospect comes into your instance. Maybe they don't know about your company or what you guys do. So adding them to like a new prospect journey, introducing them to the company, introducing them to the brand, sending them a list of products and services to determine what they might be interested in. And then, of course, leveraging engagement studios for re-engagement or further nurturing. So at times we have leads that go cold. What can we do with these cold leads? Add them to a nurture to re-engage them in hopes of getting them to engage again and sending them to sales. You can also go as far as, similar to what we mentioned above with the flow that Jessica spoke about, nurturing, closed lost opportunities, or nurturing folks who were customers in the past and they haven't come back, kind of re-engaging them and treating them a little differently than how you would, treat a lead. And then in setting up your nurture, naturally, you would have to send prospects relevant emails with links to additional assets. So you don't actually just have to send links. You can also send them to forms to download additional assets like white paper and ebooks, right? We don't always want to give. Sometimes we want to ask them for additional information so we can get something from them before we give something to them. Utilizing additional landing pages with progressive profiling. So as mentioned above, as we're able to kind of build out someone's profile a bit more, we're able to leverage grading to kind of, move them up our grading scale to increase their grade a bit. And any interaction that someone does with your emails or your forms or anything like that, all of that scoring is taking place. So we're able to increase that prospect score as they're engaging. So clicking on links, downloading assets, completing forms. And then last but not least, assigning that lead to either sales based on their scoring and their grading threshold, or again, adding them to a nurture based on kind of where they sit in the funnel. Next up would be the reporting and analytics. So keeping in mind that this is super important because you want to make sure that your campaign and that your strategy is performing well. So utilizing Salesforce reports and B2BMA marketing analytics to kind of track those measures. So just a couple of things that we typically look at would be click-through rate. How are your landing pages performing? How are our emails doing? How are those ad placements performing? Conversion rate. So out of all the visits to your website or your landing pages, how many people are actually converting? Cost per lead and cost per MQL. How much are we spending on these leads that we're generating? MQLs to SQLs. So out of all of those MQLs that we're sending to sales, how many are actually turning into SQLs? And then, of course, out of those SQLs that we're sending to sales, how many are actually turning into opportunities? And then, of course, opportunity close rate. So I would say I typically like to report on, open opportunities against opportunities that are close won and close lost, just like to kind of see that ratio. And then typically what's our average deal size? So what's that deal size when it comes from, a lead being open up all the way up till it's worked, all the way up till it's converted? What does that deal size look like? You can kind of compare that to other deals in the system.
And I do think that cost per lead and cost per MQL is going to be a much more high value metric to report on, especially as all of our budgets start to tighten. So that's definitely something I would recommend you all keep in your back pockets.
And popcorning over to Jessica so she can go over the lead qualification threshold.
And now it's my turn. All right, so given a lead qualification threshold, classify prospects appropriately. So we base our thresholds on scoring and grading. So we're going to utilize scoring and grading together to determine the most interested prospects with the highest purchasing indicators to mark as MQLs to push over to sales. A high score and a high grade combination to me indicate a very hot lead, right? This is somebody that you want to pass to sales and you want them to contact immediately. For a refresher, scoring is your numeric indicator of how interested somebody is in your business, your services, and doing business with you. This is based on activity, email opens, form completions, link clicks, all of that good stuff. And then your grading is a letter grade, A through F. It's an indicator of how interested you should be in doing business with that prospect. That's going to be based on their demographic and firmographic data like location, job title, industry, company size, all of that good stuff. Scoring. So in addition to the out-of-the-box scoring model, you can adjust these scoring rules by adjusting those manually, creating scoring categories, using automation rules, or page and completion actions. So for example, maybe a form completion is worth 50 points, but a landing page completion is worth 100. Maybe a product page is worth 8 points, but your contact us page is worth 10. Really, the possibilities are endless here, right? The other option would be to use score DK rules. So we have those in place for prospects that unsubscribe from our emails. Out of the box, there is a score DK setting for opportunities that are closed lost associated with prospects. So I believe I don't remember the value off the top of my head, but in my org, it's minus 50 points, right? We also have lead decay rules based on inactivity. So if you don't open an email, you don't click around on the website for 6 months, I deduct from your score because you're not interested at this point in time, right? Here is a major caveat. Remember that any changes you make to the out-of-the-box scoring rules are retroactive. If you decide that every email open past the first open is worth 5 points and you adjust that, anybody who's ever opened any email multiple times is going to get 5 points added to their score for each one of those. Be super, super careful making those changes.
Jessica, just to chime in really quick, I just want to call out the importance of looking at that out-of-the-box scoring that Salesforce kind of already sets for you. Just because I think to Jessica's point, in her org, closed loss is negative 50, but I've seen it be like negative 100. So imagine a prospect in your database who doesn't have a score, or maybe their score is 20 and someone's working an opportunity and it gets, it's closed lost. And then all of a sudden they're like in the negative in regards to scoring and you're trying to figure out why or how. So really important to assess that back-end scoring model and then of course make updates relevant to your business.
Absolutely. Not everything regarding the out-of-box scoring is one size fit all. So definitely audit those the next chance you get. All right, so some of my favorite lead threshold stuff, I guess, in Pardot is grading. So your default grading profile, your out of the box, is going to include company size, industry, location, job title, and department. You can add or remove some of these based on creating additional profiles or using automation rules to add or subtract the letter value, right? So again, this is valued A through F, and it can be F all the way up to, I believe, an A plus. Utilize your buyer persona, your company's research, your ideal audience data to create grading profiles and segmentations for your business. So maybe you are looking for director levels. So those would be maybe an A grade, but somebody that's a CEO does not necessarily fit your buying profile. So those would maybe be a B minus, right? Again, possibilities are endless. It's extremely customizable to what you and your business want to do. All right, I want to pass it back to Ariel real quick.
Thanks, Jessica. So the next set of slides, we're going to cover the recommended kind of model to routing qualified and unqualified leads. All right. So we'll go over these 3 scenarios up here on the slide. So the first scenario being that a prospect has a score of 100 and a grade of a B minus or better. So we don't necessarily know, where this prospect came from. I'm sure if we do a little digging, we can kind of figure it out. But if you're looking for a way to find all prospects in your database with a score of greater than 100 and a grade of a B minus or better, the easiest way to kind of solve this would be to set up an automation rule, right? Pulling that automation rule, adding in your criteria of the score and for the grade, of course, previewing your results first, because sometimes there's little caveats where you're pulling in data where you didn't mean to pull in that data. And then, of course, adding actions to that automation rule to either assign that lead or to create a Salesforce task to either notify that lead or that contact owner for reach out. The second example would be that a prospect completes our contact us form on our landing page. So there's 2 ways that you could kind of handle the triggers for this. If they're completing a form, One way would be to add completion actions to that form directly, right? So if they're completing that specific form and you're not worried about anything else, adding completion actions to that form to assign that lead out, to maybe change the lead stage, to add additional scoring if you want to on top of that backend scoring. And of course, if it's a net new lead, maybe adding the assign via active assignment rule in Salesforce to make sure it gets routed to the right BDR sales team member. And then, of course, the second option would be to leverage an automation rule. With automation rules, you can kind of call out specific forms. So let's say you have quite a few contact us forms, and maybe you kind of want to essentially bucket them together. Just a thought, you could leverage an automation rule to be able to do that, to say that if they complete contact us form A, B, or C, then do this action or take this action with all of these forms. And then the last example would be sales returns a lead that has gone cold. So sometimes that happens, right? We send a lead over to sales and sales is following up and the lead kind of just went MIA and hasn't returned an email or hasn't returned a phone call. With this, there are two things that I personally think really help strategy-wise, and it's having a disqualified stage and a marketing stage, right? Because if the lead feels like, they were never really interested and maybe that's why they went cold on us, you could disqualify them completely, but provide a reason. So marketing knows if they need to continue to engage with that lead or not based off the disqualification reason. Then of course, the second option would be having some type of marketing stage, right? To send that lead back to marketing. And then of course you can provide a reason for that stage too. Like maybe it's just that they went cold, no response. And then in that case, on the Pardot side, marketing can add that prospect to a nurture with relevant content based on what we know about that particular lead with targeted CTAs in hopes of getting them to engage again and sending them back to sales. Next up would be our different scenarios. So we'll cover from top to bottom. So the top left box, this particular scenario, we're looking at a low score and a low grade. So someone who comes in and obviously they're not our ideal customer and they haven't really engaged with us much. So in this case, we're going to add them to a nurture with the goal of increasing their engagement and their score. So we're going to add them to a nurture in hopes of getting them to click on links, complete our forms so that we can kind of build out their profile a bit more and increase that grade. The second option, top left, would be someone with a low score and a high grade. So ideally, this prospect is someone we're interested in, and we want to work with them, but they haven't engaged with us much. So in this instance, we're going to add the prospect to a nurture with relevant content and targeted CTAs, kind of based on what we know they would be interested in because their score is high. Based on what Jessica mentioned earlier, we're using company, location, role to send them relevant content to increase their score. And ideally, once they hit our scoring threshold, we would then be sending them over to sales for BDRs or the sales team to follow up on. Next up, bottom left, high score, low grade. So in this case, this person has been actively engaging with us. Maybe they're on our website, they've completed forms, they've downloaded white papers and content, but their grade is relatively low. So not necessarily someone we would want to work with. So in this case, we would add them to a nurture with a series of emails that kind of link out to forms. So we can build out their profile a little bit more, ask them some additional questions to see if they would be someone we'd be interested in working with to get their grade up a little higher. And then of course, last but not least, bottom right, we have score high grade. So ideally, this is the ideal customer. They meet our ideal profile and persona, and this is somebody we really, really want to work with. So in most cases, with this particular scenario, we would send them to sales immediately. And then, of course, either assign the lead to someone and create a Salesforce task, notifying the owner of that lead or contact.
All right. So here is our bonus section. When I took the exam not too long ago, the Einstein section of the exam was not counted for or against whether or not I passed or failed, but it definitely was on the exam. And I think kind of as these features become more widely adopted, it's definitely beneficial to know and to have this information in your back pocket. So let's look at account engagement scoring versus Einstein behavior scoring. I got this graphic from salesforcebin.com. There's a link here. It is an amazing article, kind of just right down the middle. Here's this versus this. So I'm not going to read this through to you, but basically the things you need to know is that the Pardot score is based on the actions that you take, right? So you click an email, you get a point. You fill out a form, you get 10 points. Now, your Einstein behavior score is going to look at the activity that your prospects take versus the activity that prospects who have already converted have taken in the past. So are you filling out forms and clicking on links at the same rate as other successful converted prospects? Or are you maybe taking things a little bit slower? Pardot scoring is infinite. I have 6,000 points in my org, but my Einstein behavior score is 100. Einstein maxes out at 100, and it kind of moves up or down constantly with how engaged your prospects actively are. So if you don't click on my website for about a week, maybe 3-4 weeks, your score is going to go down. But when you start opening emails again and clicking around again, it's going to shoot back up. That's based on activity that prospects similar to your profile have taken. And then most importantly, my favorite part of this is that your prospects out of the box in Pardot are individual. So the only way they're connected is based on accounts, right? But your prospect score, your behavior score in Einstein looks at your database as a whole. So again, it's looking to see whether or not your prospects are doing the same things in different time frames, what are negative and positive impacts of these things. So if they open too many emails, maybe that indicates to Einstein that it's a bot and it's not as valuable as somebody who was opening an email 3 times versus 10 times. So it looks at a bunch of different things to avoid having prospects be sent over that have a 6,000 point score that work at your company, right? Or maybe are a competitor. And then Einstein lead scoring, this lives on your lead record in Salesforce. Again, this is 0 to 100, and it's based on how likely your lead is to convert into an account or contact and or an opportunity. This is based on past lead record conversions. It's going to look at your standard and your custom fields. It's also going to look at the positive and negative conversion signals similar to the behavior scoring. And it uses AI and machine learning to score every single lead. I absolutely love our Einstein lead scoring, and I love our Einstein behavior scoring. We are building out nurtures with our behavior scoring right now to target people in groups of, or in sets of 10, so like 0 to 10 points and then 90 to 100 points. For people who haven't converted yet, but are showing high levels of interest at this point in time. So I'm really excited to see how that works out. And I definitely think if you have access to these in your org, utilize them today. All right, so the part that everybody has been waiting for, I'm going to let Ariel read out our trivia question, and then she will pick 2 winners from our audience today to receive a free voucher for your next certification exam.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica. I feel like it's like a drum roll. It's like the part.
Oh, yeah. That's what everybody's been waiting for.
But yeah, so pretty much what we're going to do is we're going to ask you guys to chat the answers to the question up here on the screen. The first 2 people who chat will be the winners of the vouchers. So which of the following is not typical of lead gen strategy planning? A, audience planning, B, scoring and grading criteria, C, sales phone scripts, and D, lead management processes. I think we already have answers down here. It looks like Tatiana and Kyle are the winners. Yay!
Awesome. Congratulations.
So
sorry.
Tatiana and Kyle, we're going to ask that you DM myself via the meeting here, DM myself or Jessica, your email addresses, and we will send you the voucher codes.
Awesome. Congratulations, guys. And I do want to point out that this is not atypical. This is kind of the questions that you will see on your exam. They're designed to trick you, right? And don't think about what you would do in your organization today. Think about the direction that Salesforce wants you to go in. A lot of these, you can eliminate one right off the bat. Obviously here at sales phone scripts, but some of them you'll have to think a little bit harder about. So just take your time, take a deep breath. You absolutely can pass this exam. All right, I think that's all Ariel and I have today for our presentation. Are there any questions anybody's got we can help you guys answer? It doesn't look like it. Ariel, I can hang out for a minute to see if we've got anybody that's going to ask any questions, but otherwise, I think we have about wrapped up. So feel free to drop if you guys have something else to do. Otherwise, thank you for attending. Congratulations to our winners. We really had a lot of fun today.
Thank you, everybody.